Real estate is about freedom, choice freedom, time freedom, and money freedom, and the impact you can make with that freedom. But it doesn't come without cost. Your freedom takes work. That's why Neil Timmins brings together the tools you need to build your real estate legacy, from tips and tricks to interviews with industry titans. It's all here in one place. Real Grit. Let's get to it.
Hey everybody, welcome to Real Grit. I'm Neil Timmins. I'm here with Josh Culler. Let me tell you a little about him, because this could be fun because he delivers so much what all of us need. We need to look better. Okay. So he's been in the industry since 2013. He's been a part of hundreds of deals as a managing director. He's owner of Culler Media. It's a full service provider that offers social media management along with YouTube, podcasting, other forms of content marketing. Primarily for those who are in the real estate investing education space. Culler Media services, they do a whole bunch of things. It's a white glove approach for content production, copywriting, and distribution. Now, personally, he's a follower of Christ. He's been married since October 13 of 2018 to Gabriella. They've got 2 fur babies, Siberian Husky and a German Shepherd. He's always looking for opportunities to make the world a better place. Josh, how are you?
Neil, I am doing fantastic. I told you before we were jumping on here that I've taken a little bit of a sabbatical and not been on podcasts, but I'm honored to be you're the first one that I'm jumping on here with in probably 6 months on a podcast. And I'm really excited. Real Grit is great. I love the word grit. So I'm excited to talk about whatever we're going to talk about and hang out.
No, I'm excited that you're here. We've known each other for probably a couple of years since I think we were first introduced, and it's been a little bit since we've seen each other. So I'm honored that, in your parlay back into podcasts, it's mine that you're taking the first step with. So.
We're going to hang out. We're good.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, everybody's got a different entry point, no matter where you're at in the real estate industry. And everybody serves and invests and does a whole bunch of different things at different eras or different points of the industry. What was your first step into real estate specifically?
It's a real long story, but I'm going to cut it way down because it starts with a girlfriend that I had broken up with, leading into working in a warehouse, leading into working with a friend of mine from high school whose dad owned about 500 rental doors in the area. And that was just way back when I was 19 years old. So I've been in this for a while. It's going on close to 10 years this year. Like I said, I had worked for a buddy of mine that I went to high school with and played basketball with and baseball with. And his dad owned these rental properties, and they just brought me on. I was 19. I was doing, at that point in the real estate investing industry, I was doing Craigslist listings. I was doing bandit signs, putting those out, doing pre-looks at houses, and just about everything that a 19-year-old young man would do that has no experience in anything.
Right.
And then I parted ways with them, and I went to work for, our good friend, Gary Harper. So Gary hired me when I was just about to turn 20 years old. And he was partners with a couple other guys, Wayne Schaefer and Tom Olson, wholesaling here in the Midwest. And he brought me on to do just about everything that I was doing at the previous place, except for he had a little bit more of a vision for me. And he and I go way back. He was actually my 4th grade Sunday school teacher. So we go way back, and he really believed in me from the start. He and I were in the same office for probably about 5-6 years. And at first we were doing virtual wholesaling. One thing, it's kind of funny because I went into doing this whole marketing space for real estate investors, and he went into doing like EOS implementation, stuff like that. And one thing he and I both realized was we hated real estate so much. We hated going out to the properties and visiting them. I told you earlier, we live here in Northwest Indiana, right outside Chicago, and we were wholesaling in Eastern Indiana and then also all of Michigan and Ohio. And so for us to go look at these properties, it really sucked. So we decided to do virtually, but back then virtual wholesaling was not really a thing. I'm not saying we invented it, but we figured it out. And so we did, I believe it was close to 70 deals our first year together, just in Michigan and Ohio. Wow. And then over time, that company developed. Gary got pushed into an operations role. I got pushed into the marketing director seat and started running that. Now, back then, it was all dispositions marketing. We weren't doing any acquisitions. We weren't cold calling and running ads, and we weren't sending direct mail and all that good stuff. It was focused on building cash buyers and that sort of thing. Yeah. And then that's what kind of got me into it. And then right around 2017, the company split. I went to run a real estate mastermind, and then 2019 in February, I went full-time into what we're doing now. And it's been ever since. So that's the story in really short time.
No, that's great. And then Gary went and did, like you said, EOS implementation, does a whole bunch of things from a business perspective. He has come, his team's come here and done that for us. Great stuff. It's oftentimes the thing that gets to the next thing, right?
Absolutely.
So for a lot of people, single family investing is the holy grail. And for a lot of other folks, it's the outcome of investing and the outcome of your journey and experience that leads you to down a completely different path.
Absolutely.
Get you to where you're supposed to be. So tell me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Culler Media. Talk to me about what that is and how you work and who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you allowing me to talk about that. So basically, because of my history in the real estate investing industry, I've really niched into the industry. So I don't work with anybody that's outside the space. I do work, my primary demographic people that I work with are educators. So people that have masterminds, coaching programs, education, educational courses, live events, and stuff like that. The basic social media management, we do YouTube production, the full service YouTube production, podcasting. We do book publishing and just a couple other content marketing related things within the space. And then outside of that, working with active investors, I've really gone deeper into the consulting role of helping real estate investors really establish marketing plans, because most real estate investors, it's so difficult nowadays, Neil. Like there's so many influencers out there. Even I alone work with, anywhere from 50 to 60 at a time, just people that are teaching real estate, and it's all different asset classes and all different ways you could chop it up. And as an active real estate investor, you could look at all these influencers, follow them on Instagram, consume their podcasts, and then get very distracted and confused on what you do. Correct. So I've really stepped into that with my experience and everything that I've been a part of, and especially, the clientele that I work with. And I do consulting now for active real estate investors. And, I talked about it a little bit before this. I actually this is how I kind of got started into the business. I would go visit real estate investors on site, do a video planning session for them, help them create scripts and, give them all the feedback and directing that they needed in order to be on video. And then we would actually film the video, edit the videos, and then send them back to them or help them with distribution. And so I don't do that anymore because it's a lot of traveling, and COVID really put me back on that. So that was fun though, because 2-3 times a week on a plane is not fun. I don't know how Gary does it, but anyway, that's what we're focused on now. And it's developed into that. So.
No, that's pretty cool. Well, it seems to me like, marketing is the backbone of this business. If you're going to be buying properties, and specifically if you're buying seller direct, marketing is the backbone of your business, and there needs to be a plan associated with it.
I agree. And specific directions. And I tell people this all the time, like there's 3 things that can really make marketing fail. It's personnel. So if you don't have the right people to actually, do it, then, if you have somebody that says they can do web development, but they actually can't, and it's very basic or whatever, or it's not even the right type of web development that you need, that could hurt you. And then expectations from the CEO, that's where I run in a lot of problems with people. The CEO is like this, and then the personnel is like, no, this is more realistic. And then lack of direction for not just your leads, like not knowing what to take action on, but you as a marketing plan, what you're implementing. Like I mentioned earlier, there's just so many things that you could do in marketing, and not all of them are the right things. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And some of that, it seems like it would, it starts internally. What do you want? What do you want the outcome to be? And then making decisions from there. As you mentioned, there's a whole bunch of people you can learn stuff from, and there's no right or wrong. It's really what's right for you.
Absolutely.
Can't go down 2 paths. You've got to make a decision and figuring out what's right for you and then going down that path.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think that there's variables to everything. I was interviewing when I was doing my podcast last year. I was interviewing a good friend of mine named Andrew Newland. He's in Springfield, Missouri. And he tells a story on how he almost went broke because he marketed so well that he almost went broke, because he did what everybody said and opened up all these marketing channels, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on it over the course of several months, which it's ad spend that people would never be able to imagine. Right. And not just ad spend, but spend on marketing that people would not be able to imagine. But the problem was he didn't have the sales staff on the backside of it to actually be able to intake those leads and close the deals. And so they were getting all these qualified leads, but not being able to push them through the funnel and actually close the deals. And that almost made them go broke. So there's always variables. And he was one of those that, looked at it, and he's in a couple of high level masterminds, and everybody's telling him, do this. And then he went and did it. And but the problem is that, obviously, like I'm in masterminds, I think that
Yeah.
they're incredibly valuable. But like you said, as long as you're focused on what your needs are, that's the most important thing, because you could really crush your soul and your business
Correct.
by over marketing or even, under marketing, because somebody, 15 different people told you to do these different things.
Well, then you've got to play it out. What happens after what happens, right?
Yes.
And then what
absolutely.
happens? And then what
Mhm.
happens, right? The whole thing's a funnel. So it's just a never ending, wheel, if you will, of bringing these things in on a conveyor belt, right?
Like,
Just
yeah.
you get raw inventory in. I got a house or a contract, and a house you got to go
Mhm.
through the whole process to go out the manufacturing plant, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's like you said, there's a cause and effect to everything. And so like, if you are marketing so well, like you said earlier, it's the lifeblood of the business,
Right.
but then you don't have the sales staff to be able to, like Andrew, you don't have the sales staff to be able to intake those leads and close them, then that's a problem. Maybe you do have the marketing and the sales staff, but you don't have the transaction coordinator in
Correct.
place to be able to handle that. And then do you have the actual cash buyers on the back end? There's so many things that you have to evaluate that.
That's right.
I would say look downstream and upstream on both ends of the spectrum.
That's right.
And if you don't, then you could really hurt yourself, even if you're marketing well. So,
right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Talk to me about, somebody wants to do something on video, where should they start? Maybe, and then, past where they should start, what are the top 2 or 3 things that are important in a video message when they're conveying something to somebody on a Facebook, in a 2-minute piece, or on YouTube in a couple-minute piece?
Yeah, the first thing is, depending on who you're going after. Let's just take, for example, somebody that's doing self-storage versus wholesaling. So they're wholesaling single family houses,
Okay.
or, somebody that's doing self-storage facilities. Your demographics are different.
Totally different.
They're totally different.
Yep.
And this isn't just for video. This is marketing as a whole, but video, this is literally the quintessential failure that most people take. Is let's say, for instance, somebody's doing self-storage and they're putting videos out on TikTok or Instagram Reels, but they're not directing it to the correct demographic. I like to use the example as a wholesaler trying to start a podcast to bring in motivated seller leads. You're not going to build up a podcast subscriber count of 100,000 motivated sellers that are going to come back to you every single week to listen to your podcast. Even though you do ideally you want referrals and you want people to, refer you to other people.
Yep.
It's transactional, right? It's going to happen one time, maybe a second time, years down the road, just realism, right? So it's all about the video content going towards the right direction that you're steering in. And there's always the argument of I could put videos out on TikTok and I could have other wholesalers bring me deals. If that's your strategy, absolutely, that's what you got to do. But that needs to be your strategy. You need to know your demographic.
That's also a different audience.
It is. Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. It's a wholesaler bringing you deals is a totally different demographic than a motivated seller bringing you deals.
Correct.
And then I even go as nitty gritty as okay, what does your motivated sellers look like? In some markets, foreclosures are more apparent than others. In some markets, tired landlords are more apparent than others. So if your deals, 50% of them are coming from tired landlords, then you better be doing a whole lot more marketing towards them, because now you have a lot of credibility. You've done a lot of deals with other landlords and they could even refer you to others. So knowing your demographic is the first thing that you got to do with video. The second thing I would recommend is just making sure that you are very clear and specific in your messaging, because what I see a lot of people doing is they'll put videos out there, but they won't give any direction. It was what I mentioned earlier about why marketing fails, lack of direction. So on the lead side of things, if you're not leading your leads to the proper place that you want them to go, they're definitely not going to close, but they're definitely not going to fill out a web form, a landing page, or anything like that. Just make sure that you are guiding them in the right path. So, hey, you want to sell your house to our landlord? Click the link below. It'll take you to this web form, and tell them what's going to happen when they click the link below.
What happens next? Yep.
And the more you can guide and direct somebody on a video, and it's easy because you're able to articulate it by speaking, because that's how human beings connect at the highest level. So guide and direct your demographic is the next one. And then the last thing I would say, Neil, is keep it simple. Way too many people try to overcomplicate it. Now, I'm not saying you could get away with garbage video and, with your microphone, the wind's blowing and it's all muffled and everything. I'm not saying you can get away with that.
Right.
But there are very easy ways to keep things simple. For instance, when I hopped on the Zoom call here with you, you're like, man, you're looking good. You're giving me all these compliments. I'm like, I just have my microphone here that is just literally hooked to my desk and it stays there, doesn't move. I've got a digital camera that's set on a tripod and it's plugged into my computer. And that's it. Like there's nothing else. I've got, Power Beats headphones on to hear you. It's very simple. It took me maybe 3 minutes to set up.
But it's killer. I'm telling you, the video quality is killer. The audio quality you have is killer.
Yeah. And nowadays it's easier than ever to be able to keep that quality very high level. I mean, if you really truly wanted to shoot video on your iPhone, they're good enough cameras now that you could do it contextually. I would recommend, especially if you're going towards motivated sellers, I would recommend having somebody on the other side that's filming you as opposed to doing a selfie video. Yeah. But again, it's knowing your demographic, because if you're going after wholesalers, a selfie video might work. But keeping it simple is very key. Like we've talked about, like there's a million things you could do with video content. Yep. Here's the thing. If you overcomplicate it for yourself, you will not stay consistent with it. That's and right. Consistency is what ultimately wins at the end of the game for video content. So
are you finding a better platform currently than others in terms of where video has legs?
Again, that's subjective, Neil, because if we're talking to, say, wholesalers versus wholesaling educators, my answer would be different. Mm-hmm. Again, it just goes back to knowing your demographics so well that you know where they hang out, when they hang out, and like why they're at a specific platform. Overall, it's hilarious to say YouTube is probably the most underrated video platform right now.
Isn't that funny?
It's hilarious to say because people are like, oh, it's YouTube. Like, because how's that?
Because it's the biggest.
Yeah. Well, right. People have just been completely underestimating it because of TikTok coming up and Instagram coming up. And
it's not new.
And it's not new, but it's been consistent over time, which is why it is still the number one video platform and the second largest search engine on the planet. And that leads me into my second point with it is treat YouTube as a search engine. So if you're creating videos to motivated sellers, first of all, like you would throw them on YouTube with very specific buzzwords and key phrases that directing towards a motivated seller, answering a question that they might have about your service. So one of the biggest questions that motivated sellers search for is, what is a real estate investor? Because they don't know what it is. They have no clue. They think it's a suit on Wall Street, somebody that is going to be, sleazy. A slumlord is another great example for that, right? Like that's nothing new to us. Even though it's old news to us, it's still relevant to the motivated seller market. Another one is, what's the difference between a real estate investor / wholesaler or a realtor? Like, again, people don't know the difference. And so it's your job to educate them. So when you're doing your videos, answer those questions. When you throw them on YouTube, make sure that the titles are very direct towards answering the question or rephrasing the question. So if your video is about what the difference is between a wholesaler and a realtor, your title might say something like the difference between a realtor and a wholesaler, because you're using the familiar word, which is realtor first before wholesaler, because everybody knows realtor is. So make it specific and, make sure that you're doing good descriptions and whatnot. But there's a lot of ninja tricks on YouTube. It's a very intensive platform, but it's definitely underrated. And then make sure you embed that video on your website so it directs back to you.
And so from that, it sounds to me like you can go off and answer a whole bunch of things, questions, obviously things, you treat it like a search engine, answer those questions, and you don't necessarily have to buy traffic. These things are going to be organic.
You can. You can buy traffic. Obviously, like PPC will work well with SEO if you're doing a 1-2 punch, if you really want to get to the top in your market on the search algorithms. But you don't have to. And I even use it, Neil, as I'll tell my clients, use those videos as good follow-up campaigns. So if a seller contacts you and is interested in selling their property, you should be at least collecting their data in some way, shape, or form. Send them email campaigns that are educating them. And especially if they had a very specific question on something, maybe you answer them on the phone, obviously, but then you say, hey, I'm also going to send you a video in case you can't remember what we talked about and you want to reference it later. Here's a video on answering your question. And then that video goes to them and now they have it. And you've built some pretty authentic credibility with that seller. It's invaluable. So
video is a completely different connection with a human than just a phone call.
Yes, absolutely.
To be able to provide them that is pretty significant. Tell me personally, what's a habit that you possess that you couldn't live without? that contributes to your success?
It's kind of funny, Neil. So like I have all these books behind me, and I get in a rut sometimes where I will overconsume. And last year, all of 2021, I did not read a single book and I did not listen to a single podcast. And our business doubled in revenue and went up from 1% in net profits from 2020 to 39% profits.
Wow.
With double the revenue and 5 less clients than we had. So I just stopped consuming. I just started implementing. I would have said reading would be a habit, but here's the thing. The reason I bring that up is because there's probably at least 10 books on that bookshelf behind me that's all about habits. It's not that I don't believe in habits. I actually do believe in habits. But for me as a human being, I know myself so well that when I start to implement habits, I take it so seriously that it's very rigid. And as humans, like when you wake up in the morning, you don't always know what's going to happen that day. And if you are so locked into the habits that you're like, oh, this happened, but I can't go off of this habit, then, it could really mess you up. So for me, my habit is no habits. It's kind of funny. I don't go to the gym at the same time every day, but I do go to the gym every day. I don't necessarily have a specific diet, but I eat well every single day. I do not set an alarm. It's kind of funny, Neil, like I posted a post, maybe it was like sometime last year around this time, giving this breakdown of like why I don't set alarms and everything. And just out of the woodworks, I had like 200 comments of people saying the same thing. They're like, I've had set an alarm in years. And I'm like, oh, I thought I was alone. But the reality is for me, is like, I understand myself so well that, I know that my body is, when I'm tired, I'm going to go to sleep. Yeah. And when I'm rested, I'll wake up. And sometimes that's 6 a.m. Sometimes that's 8 o'clock. Now, obviously, if I have something going on in the morning, then I'll make sure I'm awake. Yeah. But I have never slept so well in my entire life than I have since I stopped setting an alarm. It's incredible how the human body works, right? So I trust it. But I just think that I would challenge people. I hear a lot about habits and whatnot. Just make sure that you're implementing the correct habits. Right. Again, like if you have a challenge if you don't keep up with stuff, then you really get down on yourself and then you quit. Ultimately, that's where a lot of people fail with habits, I think, Neil. Yeah. A good example is food. Food is really challenging to keep up with. Yes. And sometimes you'll skip out on a day and it's like, oh man, that was rough, but I'm good. I'll pick it back up. And then the next week it's 2 days. And then the next week it maybe go to 3 days and all of a sudden it's dropped off and people get so hard on themselves that they just quit. And that's not good. So I know it's not a specific answer, but hopefully it helps.
I think it's great because it's such a unique perspective. And I think it goes back to what I've said earlier on. There's no right or wrong. It's just a function of what's right for you.
Absolutely.
And you've been able to find a balance in your life and how you manage it that works perfectly.
I think people rely on other people's thinking too much and they don't throw their own lives in that, because it's the same thing as marketing. There's always a variable. You have no idea what other people are doing behind the curtain. I see this all the time because I'm in social media. Right. Somebody will look at, this influencer, like, how'd that guy get 1 million views on his video? But then I look at like, okay, well, the rest of his videos only have like 100 views. Well, he obviously threw ad spend at that, but that's not what people are talking about. They're talking about the view count. There's always variables. And what works for me as a human being does not work for you, Neil, or does not work for Gary or anybody else that's listening to the show. So I just challenge people to know thyself more than anything.
Yeah. All right. Take me back. You said something and I can't let it slide. 2020 to 2021 was night and day. All right. Yes. So what's in there? It wasn't just habits. What was in there? And but you mentioned you stopped over consuming stuff. So we just stop over consuming. What took place that made it so very different from each year?
I love talking about this when we were really declining in terms of like profit margin because of the fact that it slowly crept up on us. Like it wasn't like it was an overnight thing. It took like about 6 months for it to kick in. So I'll wind the clocks back to, that would have been September of 2020. I had just joined Collective Genius and I just joined Family Mastermind with Matt Andrews. And that mastermind is literally my entire clientele. I've got about 60 clients in that mastermind that we've worked with. I joined both of them at the same time. And they were literally like, CG was the first week. And then 2 weeks later, it was Family Mastermind. Yeah. And I had been in a place prior to, it would have been early August, where I actually took my COO now. She was my writer. I promoted her to COO. And that was August. A month later, I went to these two masterminds. I spoke at both of them and we blew up. I believe we had onboarded about 20 clients in less than a month. And that was a no-no. So we onboarded clients so fast, and then I didn't have the personnel to accommodate the work. So I had to hire that up. And in the meanwhile, I wasn't really vetting specifics in terms of capacity. I wasn't vetting anything with, at the time, we didn't have core values. We didn't have like any kind of like hiring process at all. Yeah. So I was just hiring video editors and content writers and whatnot to fulfill what we had onboarded.
Right.
So me as a CEO, I'm just like, yeah, let's bring everybody on. Let's go. And because that's my job. I'm the salesperson, because we don't work with a lot of clients. We're a white glove service. And so like my job is to just do sales. I don't have a salesperson because we don't onboard a lot of leads.
Right.
So long story short, my COO had just got thrown into the flames. I literally just dumped all of this on her. And I was just on a rampage bringing clientele in. It did not take very long for me to start seeing work quality was dropping. And I'm having a great time. I had no process for checking like financials or anything and keeping track of KPIs and all that. So we go to check out of the hotel, and I had my at the time it was a Chase Ink card, and I swiped it to check out, and it declined. And I was like, that's not good. So then I'm like, okay, well, let me try the debit card. So I tried the debit card, and that declined. So we had to actually use my personal debit card to check out of the hotel. So I'm like, do you mind if I just go back to the room to grab a couple things? So I was using that excuse. I went back to the room. I checked our bank accounts, and they were all in the negatives. I was kind of astounded. I had no clue what to do. I'd never been in a position like that. We had more clients than ever. We were making more money than ever. Yeah. But then I was looking at our overhead, and because from a snapshot, we ran everything through QuickBooks, and I can see in QuickBooks our expenses. And literally it was like revenue and then expenses. And it was disastrous. And so I sat there bawling my eyes out like, I'm a failure. This sucks. How did this happen? I'm in Cabo, and how did I let this slide? And it was literally like the worst end to a fun trip ever. Yeah. So long story short, I reached out to several people that are mentors, Gary being one of them, and got a lot of help. I got a lot of love back, and they're all like, I posted in one of the mastermind groups I was in, and I had at least like 150 comments, and half of them. I
remember the post.
Yeah. So, and half of them were like, dude, you're in a good spot. I was in a position a couple of years ago where I lost $1 million or $500,000. And I'm like, I'm just like 15 grand in debt. Like I guess it's not that bad. So I got a lot of help, a lot of love. And from that post, you remember, I had several people call me, and just like, and I'm in Cabo at the airport, and people are calling me, and I'm like, no, I'm good. I just need a little bit of help. So long story short, we went through, Gary invited me over right when I got back from Cabo, and we sat down at his house and just had a good conversation. So it came out to be the first week of January, we implemented EOS with Gary, and we facilitated everything. Long story, we found 6 or 7 areas where there was lots of money that was just bleeding, and it was unnecessary money. And I'm talking thousands of dollars a month. That was just, it shouldn't have been there. And then we had a couple team members that were logging like 50-hour work weeks, but working 10 at $16, $17 an hour. It was terrible. And that had gone on for like 6-7 months. Yeah. So there was a lot of things that we had gone through. Gary had my COO do time studies on all the team and everything. And then I found out there was several clients. We did profit and loss statements on all of our clients. And I found that there was about 5 clients that we were not making any money on, and 2 clients that I was actually paying monthly to work for them. I'm just the type of person, like I would bring on these clients, and they were with me for a long time. And I do value loyalty. And so I had grandfathered them into price points when I was doing everything myself. And then I had a team that was doing everything. Keeping them at the same price point. Right. So all that happened. And then the second week of January, we had David Richter implement Profit First, because I cannot be the person that manages our financials. I'm just not good at it. And I know that. Again, I know thyself. So we've been with them. We're still with them. I have a CFO, Rebecca, that works with us on a weekly basis and does all of our financials. So that's the long story, man. And it's, again, like message we just talked about, don't overmarket yourself. Like, and if you do, then put people on a waiting list, raise prices. And there's just so many things that I could have done as a CEO, as opposed to just going 100 miles an hour, maxing my team out, and then going broke. There's tons of lessons, but it's a long story. So we got that implemented, and 2021 was revolutionary. Yeah.
It's easier said than done, is it not? when you're coming from a spot, you're like, we just more clients. I just need more. We just need more.
Not all revenue is good revenue, man. And being in real estate, this, like it's really challenging to bring on that many clients at once, especially for like the service provider, stage that we're at, and actually be able to fulfill at a quality level. So we battled that out and got it done. And, lucky for me, my natural personality is a problem solver. So I went, as soon as I like balled it out in Cabo, I went directly into problem solving mode. I was reaching out to people and trying to figure it out. And, that's what happened. So we realized like we got to make sure that we have clean revenue. So we doubled our revenue from the prior year. We had 5 less clients than we had been working with. And we went from like a 1% profit in 2020 to like 39%. So changed everything.
It's incredible. Talk to me about the trajectory, where you're at right now, and what's 2022 look like? Where are you headed?
So here's where we get back to the truth. I'm not going to lie to your audience. I'm not going to lie to you, Neil. For the past month or so, I have not really been existent in the business because we were moving. So we're making a big move from our old house into the new one that we're in now. And a lesson from that is I was so consumed. It was a very, very stressful situation selling our house because the old house had a lot of things wrong with it. So literally from like February until probably about 2 weeks ago, I was checked out. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I wasn't onboarding clients. I wasn't bringing in new revenue, anything like that. And so like at the point now, like we're back on track, but you look at maybe like a month ago, I would have been on here like, we're in trouble. Like we're kind of back in the same boat we were in this previous story, not near, like not close, but kind of the same story that's coming back up. But luckily for me, I had seen those issues before, so I know how to solve them. So the last like couple of weeks I've been on, a sales tangent, being on close to 50 calls in the last couple of weeks to onboard clients, but do it correctly. Like I hadn't done before. So there's a rut. Like we were in a rut about a month ago and we've cleaned it up, luckily from, the lessons learned that we had in the story that I just told you previously. But this year again, it's not an anthem of looking at the wrong numbers where I'm like, I want to onboard this many clients. It's more for me. It's not even a revenue number. For me, it's a net profit number. I want a net profit number, but then I'm also basing it on my time working because I'm the type of person, I don't have to hustle in order to be fulfilled. I'm fulfilled when I help people and I spend time with the people that matter to me in my life. And I'm doing things that Josh Culler loves to do, as in like hobbies and stuff like that. So I'm focused on, here's my net profit percentage and number that I want to reach. And then also time that Josh Culler has on a personal level. Those are the numbers that I'm focused on at this point. And even though we had a little bit of a rut in the beginning of the year, and I didn't mention literally every single person on my team, even though we're worldwide, got COVID in February, and that set us back a little bit too. So there was just a couple of things that kind of offset, but we're good. Like we learned our lessons from the previous disaster a couple of years ago, and we're going to be fine. So.
Well, one thing I appreciate about you, and this speaks to, I think, the circles that we run in and the people we're attracted to, is your work product's exceptional. I think that speaks to a lot of the circles we run in, but then also you speak the truth that we know that there is a curtain that exists and you allow us to go behind it and talk about what things really look like. Cause everything is not all roses. Is that there's a lot of real life that happens in the business life.
There is. And one thing I realized is like, you know what, I am definitely the only one that can really bring in new revenue in the business. So how can I figure out either that is the right option or it isn't? And I got to figure that out, and I can't help people. You can certainly learn a lot of things from the wins that I have, but people learn far more from the losses. At least I do. Yes. And I think you're the type of person that does as well.
Yep.
So, for me to get on here and say like, yeah, we're doing good, we're all right. It would be lying, and there would be people listening like, hey, I know Josh and he's actually struggling. But it's true. But the reality is learning from the lessons that you've had to come across previously, reach out to the right people. We're back on track. I have no worries. We'll be right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's terrific. I mean, you've clearly been there, been at the bottom and come to a whole new top, and you'll do it again.
Again, like being in CG, like there's very little talk about like man, I'm in this group, but how are all these people invincible? How are all these people like just literally, it's nothing but going to the stars, like every single week, every time I check on something with a client that's in there, or every time I check on somebody that is a friend of mine that's in there, it's always like, we're going up, 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 up. And then I posted that post that I did when we were in Cabo. And I mean, it's hilarious looking at the comments, just like all the stuff that everybody's been through. And some of them were like, I'm in it right now. And you would never know. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're struggling in some way, shape, or form, like, dude, you're not alone, and really get onto yourself about it, because everybody struggles in business in some way, shape, or form. And there's always, Gary calls it breaking through the ceilings. So we've hit ceilings before, and you just got to bust through them and work through them.
No, you're exactly right. Everybody struggles. And if everyone, doesn't matter who it is, everybody, every average person, everybody who thinks unaverage, every big name in any environment, any industry, everybody's had stuff they've had to go through.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's move on to our final segment, what I call for impact. Your favorite quote, it's Luke 12:28. For unto whomever much is given, of much shall be required. And to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that so? Why does that resonate with you so much?
Yeah, it's a mouthful, especially depending on what version you're reading. So here's what I've learned very quickly in being in, especially when I went into business by myself, is if you have the true ability to help other people, and I'm not just talking about money. Money is one thing. Obviously, money can do a lot for the world. Yep. But also your time and resources are very important as well, because we value time. People like you and I value time far more than we do money. Correct. If you have those resources and you have the ability to help other people, then I very 100% believe that you have the responsibility to do it. And if you're a believer in Christ or not, you always have something on your heart that matters to you. And I just encourage everybody that it doesn't matter if you're a multimillionaire, if you run a $10 million a year business, a $50 million a year business, or you're by yourself and you're an LLC and you make 250 grand a year. Doesn't matter what it is. You can always do something that stretches you. And again, I'm a believer in Christ. And I think that, God tells us to give 10% as tithe, but that's where most Christians stop. And for me, I give more than that, because that is acting out on faith. And that's why I firmly believe I've been able to get to where I am, not because I expect it to happen, but because like true giving is giving without expectations. That's right. I learned that from Gary Harper, because he's somebody that's like, he gives his time more than anything. I mean, he gives a lot of money to stuff. And there's a lot that, he does that very few people ever hear about. But I think that, using your talents, your abilities, your skills, your time, your resources to help somebody in some way, shape, or form, if you have those abilities, you have the responsibility to do it. So for me, it's I leverage the funds that we bring in as a revenue, and we support missionaries that are across the world. And we're at about, so CG, actually, the first time I presented at CG, I had several people that actually started supporting missionaries with me on the same mission board that I support with. Great. And including those guys, I'm at close to about 45 missionaries that we're supporting worldwide. Wow. And that's incredible to hear. And it's just, that's what's fulfilling to me. It's not revenue numbers. It's not the amount of clients that we have. And there's not really any like tangible things that I can like really put my hands on, like, oh, that's fulfilling when I do that. Like, obviously it's cool when I get something that I like, but when you're giving, it's just a completely different set of emotions that you deal with. Yep. And it just feels so good. You put your head down at night, like, I helped this person, and I can, and it's not just like doing it once, it's doing it over and over and over again, no matter what stage you're at. So.
No, that's cool. Tell me, what is it that you think holds most investors back from hitting their personal next level?
From hitting their personal next level is, I mentioned it earlier, it's looking at other people and focusing on what other people have. I really think that it's a poison. So here's the thing. Again, the people that I primarily work with are influencers. They're people that educate on some form of asset and real estate investing.
Yep.
So it's not that I don't believe in that. I don't believe in people that are looking at other people because they're, envy is a very strong thought and emotion process that can really take you down a very dangerous path of unfulfillment. And it's not just social media. It's also when somebody gets up in Collective Genius or in another mastermind that maybe somebody's a part of, and they say, here's the deals that we're doing. Here's the numbers that we're doing. And somebody's sitting in the crowd like, I wish I could do that. Again, there's always variables. You need to look inward at yourself and think, what does Neil need? What does Josh need?
Right.
And stick to that. Make that your North Star. People like you and I, Neil, we could conquer the world if that was like what we really, really believed in and wanted to do. Yeah. But you have things that matter, to you that I'm like, why does that matter to you? But it matters to you, and that's what you need to focus on. Right. So there are obvious things of like, you want to emulate specific, if somebody's like, here's how I'm bringing in more motivated seller leads and doing it efficiently, or my lead to conversion only costs $86 per lead. Okay, well, how did you do that? Let me figure out how to do it more efficiently. There's those obvious things. And I think maturity and, people that are actually responsible understand that, but just be focused on what you're wanting to do with your life, what you're, having a why is a big thing. What's your why? What are you trying to accomplish with your life and your business? And stick to that, because anything beyond it, you could do anything that people are presenting in front of you, but is it truly in alignment with what you want with your life?
What's the old saying? Be careful who your idols are.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Right. That's exactly, it sums up everything.
Outside of real estate, what are you most passionate about?
I have a lot of hobbies, Neil. I think I love having fun. So it's kind of interesting. I'm a part of a mastermind called Multipliers Brotherhood with Chris Arnold. Oh, okay. And he has a guy on his staff that does it's called core map training. So it's another kind of personality test type thing, but it goes a little bit deeper on like your past than what I've seen because you and I have taken all the personality tests. Yep. And so this one was very interesting to look at. And he told me, he's like, dude, you're an entertainer at heart. Like you are 100% entertainer. So there's a couple of personalities that, the core is an acronym stands for, and E is entertainer. And he's like, you like to have fun and you're rebellious, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, I really am. So for me, it's having fun. Like I have a motorcycle. I love riding my motorcycle with my dad. I love guns. So I go to the gun range pretty often. It's kind of funny. I love video games. So I spend a lot of time playing video games. Yeah. I build Lego sets. Like I just love having fun. And then, spending time with my wife. She's my distribution manager within our company. And, we get to spend a lot of time together. So I just think that, enjoying life is probably the thing I spend a lot of time on and I enjoy most. So
that's great.
It keeps me going,
Yeah. You touched on this, but I'm going to ask it anyway, since it's the final question. So you may just circle back to it. I'll leave it up to you. What's your favorite way to make an impact in the community?
It's to, give what you can and make it stretch. I think that people give comfortably, and that, you and I love a challenge. People that are our types of, personality love to have a challenge and stretch goals and stuff like that. So that's right. A lot of people that are in business and they're doing well, they'll set a stretch goal for, how many deals they're going to bring in or how much revenue they're going to generate, but then they don't set a stretch goal for how much they're going to give to a charity or, something that matters to them. So I encourage, people to do that because, politicians, can they change the world? Sure. Can they, mess up the world? Absolutely. They can people that run charities or run organizations that are going to help influence the world. Sure. But it's people like you and I that are a top income earner that can help, because we have not just the ability to give money, but we have the ability to give time as well, because we're leveraging money to free up time. Right. So I do spend a lot of time, spending time with helping other people as well. And I truly care about that. So that's something I would encourage people to think about a lot. What's something that really matters to you, and just give to that. And it always comes back, but just don't have that expectation, because then you're not really truly giving. Yeah. So, right.
If people want to connect with you, they want to follow you, they want to reach out, what's the best way for them to do so?
So they could email me if they wanted to. It's just josh@joshculler.com, Culler. is my last name. So Josh at joshculler.com. You could also go to cullermedia.com, Culler media.com. I don't put out a lot of content anymore because it's not in alignment with what I want to do, Neil, but I do it for my clients. So if you wanted to, you could follow me on, social profiles. If you're on Facebook, friend me on Facebook, Josh Culler. I'm pretty much the only one that you'll find. And that's pretty much it. You can reach out to me just about any of those ways. So.
Yeah, perfect. We'll make sure we get the links put together and stick it below in the show notes.
Just send me a message and said, Neil sent me, and you're automatically in.
You're in, you'll reply. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Josh, I really appreciate you coming on, talking. It's fun and it's real to be able to go behind and talk about things that really happen from us and personally and professionally, and how one gets through the struggles to get to where they actually, are meant to be and on the path that they're supposed to be on. So I appreciate you being as candid as you are. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. And I think, it's just really important to be open and honest with people and help them learn so that they don't make the same mistakes,
Yep. Absolutely. It's a huge way to give.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, Neil. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. For everybody here at Real Grit, I'm Neil Timmins, reminding you that real estate requires real grit. See you next time. If you like our content and want more, you can access it at realgritpodcast.com. You hear it guest after guest. Instinctively, you already know it, but let me call it out. The most expensive action is inaction. The real estate market is full of opportunities. You just need to uncover them. You can build a business that lasts for years, makes monumental impact in the lives of those that you love. It's not just about business, but about the freedom you get because of it. Have you ever heard the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I believe that partnering is essential. In fact, I partner with hardworking investors all the time. The point is that you can get a lot further with the right partner. Let me say it again, the right partner. If you've ever thought about partnering with anyone, or if you have a partner now, I encourage you to download my free Partner and Profit Guide, which includes the top 5 must-answer questions to evaluate a profitable partnership. You can find it at www.legacyimpactpartners.com. I'll see you in the next episode.